Hi guys, I welcome you all to day 35 of our anthropology lecture series. So let's get started. Today we are starting with a new chapter, that is 2.5 in our syllabus, kinship. So basically it's all about the family structures and how you place yourself in the family tree or the family system, the whole family lineage, whatever it is. We'll understand it in a more detailed manner. So let's start with the meaning of kinship first. Basically, if we have to loosely try to define the meaning of kinship, it would be a web of social relationship, like through which individuals are related to one another in the society, or to be very to understand it more correctly, how they place themselves in the system of their lineage, fratry, whatever it is. These terms we are going to learn in more detail, so do not worry about what fratry is and all of that. Don't worry about that. So basically, if we talk about any grouping that is created, like we had studied, right? So, man is a social animal, so it started to create groups. So now these groups today the groups or the societies are made up of very complex relationships. So do not think about those complex relationships today. For example, today there is a workplace, right? Workplace society is there. Then the society you live in, that means if you're living in some kind of apartments or any kind of society, then there you have like social groups, right? Then you will have other kind of social groups like friend circle, right? So all of this, we are not talking about this or these complex relationships that are today. We are talking about very, very basic relationships like family, right? Family. Then other relationships that are there, which are more extended version of family, like lineage, clans, fratry, moiety. We are talking about these relationships. So these relationships are based on two things. First is marriage, and second is blood relations. This is how you make relationships, right? And these complex kind of relationships, we are not talking about that, because when we study anthropology, we have more inclination towards studying the origin or the way society, humans have evolved, right? So in that we study from the very basic things, right? So the basic way of grouping people would be either through marriage, which are called alliances, right? And then there are blood related groupings, which you can call as descent. That means who are you, who is your descendant, and like that, right? So it leads to groupings like family, then extended version of it would be lineage, clans, etc., right? These relationships are based on ancestor. That means in these grouping, who have you descended from or who is your ancestor, it plays a very important role. But these are very loose groupings, like idhar aapka there is nothing in common. But in family, in clans, in lineages, you resonate yourself with a certain kind of a group, and that group is either based on marriage, it is either based it is either blood related, so like that. And in that blood related kinship ties, ancestor plays a very important role, so he is a part of the working group, right? And when we study about the primitive societies or tribal societies, even till today, kin world is the most important for them. That means we are studying this also for a reason, because not only are we trying to trace how the groups must have come into place, it is very relevant today when we talk about the primitive groups or the tribal societies of today. Even till today, they are at this basic level of social relations, that is kinship kind of social relations. So for them, the groupings are based on kinship ties even till today. But if we talk about the modern societies, we have moved away from this kinship kind of ties. For example, in the Western societies, you will hardly find any social grouping based on kinship ties, right? Because they do not even meet their relatives, their near and dear ones. So unke liye the kinship has been got very, very small. That group has got very small, right? So let's now talk about the type of kins, right? सो हमने बात कर लिया, इट कुड बी अ फीनल, दैट मीन्स अफिनिटी बेस्ड, दैट मीन्स मैरिज से जो बनते हैं. And then there is consanguineal kins, that is based on the blood relation, right, blood related. So a filial would be marriage based, consanguineal will be blood related based. A filial mein there is no other subtype, but in consanguineal we will have, like there is primary, secondary and tertiary kins. Kins basically who's your related people, right? And now primary, secondary, tertiary, I'll just tell you by an example. For example, if I draw this is two people and then they have like two children also. This would be primary kins. That means they are directly related to each other. Parents and children, they are directly related to each other. That means they all are primary kins to each other, right? Primary kins would be people who are directly related, like parents and children. They are directly related, so they are primary kins of each other. Then we'll come to the secondary kins. For example, secondary kin would be, for example, this person marries now, this boy marries, and now he also has a kid. Let's give him just one kid, okay? So now secondary kins are primary kins of primary kin. Don't worry, I'll just explain this. Primary kin, इसके लिए इसके primary kin कौन है? इसके parents, right? They are primary kin. अब इनके primary kin कौन है? Because अभी हम सिर्फ इसके father का side we have only drawn only one side. So his primary kins are this person, and this person. So for this guy, his secondary kins would be this and this, who are the primary kin of the primary kin, right? इसके primary kin है these three, so that is why primary kin of primary kin. समझ गए, right? Then are the tertiary kins. For example, now this lady also marries somebody, okay, and now they also have a kid. ठीक है? So now tertiary kins हो गए primary kins of secondary kins. Don't worry, I'll explain it. Now we know, let's take this as ego. That means a person with whose perspective we are looking at things, because this boy had its primary kins, then he had its secondary kins, and then we have to find its tertiary kin. Now primary kin of secondary kin, for example, ये तो इसका secondary kin था, right? ये हमने देख लिया था, इसका secondary kin था. इसके primary kin कौन है? इसका primary kin इसका ये बच्चा है, right? So this would be the tertiary kin of this, right? So I hope you now understand. I'll just mark it also. This is number 2, that is secondary kin, and this is number 3, that is primary kin, and tertiary kin, and these are the primary kins of this boy. So I hope you understand. So cousins, you can say cousins would be tertiary kins of each other. Then grandparents, mama, masi, bua ji and chacha ji, all are secondary kins. Then and parents and children are primary kins to each other, right? So I hope you understood this type of kins, right? Okay. So now based on line of descent, now how do you see your descent? उससे भी there are different types of kinship ties that we can see. For example, lineal and collateral. Now just understand, I'll again draw the diagram. Then they have a boy. Now he marries to somebody, and then he too has a boy, and now this person marries somebody else, right? So now if I say that lineal kins are direct descendant of common ancestor, right? Let me just make this diagram fully, तो फिर ज़्यादा अच्छे से आपको मैं explain कर पाऊँगी. Like he has two brothers, they are two brothers, and now he marries, and then they also have a boy. and then he to marry somebody, right? So let's take this as an example, right? So now direct descendants of common ancestor would be, or lineal kins would be this, or it could be this as well, because they are in the direct line. Direct line कैसे? जैसे this would be the grandparent, then he is the father, and then he has a son, and then he too if has a son. So and this way if the line goes on, it becomes a direct lineal descent. That means it's going in a line. That means this person has a direct relationship with this, this has a direct relationship with this has a direct relationship with this, right? So like that. Whereas collateral kins would be, they have the same ancestor but they do not have the same line. For example, if I rub this first, okay, just wait, let me change the color so that it's a bit more easier to understand. Let's take orange. Yeah. So now if I have to talk about this person and this person, now both of them have the same ancestor, which is this. That means both of them trace their line from this ancestor only. But are they in the same line? They are not. They are not in the same line. That means iska line is this and iska line is this, right? So they trace their ancestry through they can trace their ancestry by two ways, that is lineal and collateral. In lineal they have the same ancestor and they follow the direct line, but in collateral they do not, though they have the same ancestor but not the same line. I hope this point is clear. And if अगर हमने इस डायग्राम से भी देखनी हो, so if this is the ego, we are sorry, ये थोड़ा सा गड़बड़ हो गया. Yeah, if this is ego, ठीक है ना, इसकी डायरेक्ट लाइन इससे है, देन इससे है अगर हम इस साइड से देखें, देन अगर हम दूसरी साइड से देखें तो दिस एंड दिस, राइट? सो लाइक दैट. एंड देन द होल, दिस होल ग्रुप, right? If I talk about this whole group, for example, this is the ego, right? This is her mother's family, this is her father's family, then they have siblings, they have kids, all of them are related to each other. For example, the whole rishtedars in our language, the whole relatives part is your kindred is the whole group of kins. So now one thing very important for you to understand here, that this grouping, that is the kindred grouping, is structured around ego. Now what is the difference? Here we were looking at things from the ancestor's point of view. That means it didn't matter who this person is. We were looking at things from this ancestor, okay? But in this we are looking at things with this ego's perspective. इसका whole relatives का group would be his kindred. So it would differ for every person, because for example if this person has a sister, for example, ठीक है, she will get married and go to another family, so she will build on new relationships, that would be part of her kindred, right? But it would not be a part of his kindred, right? So kindred would be different for every person, right? Except siblings अगर दो brothers हैं तो it would not differ for them, so like that. But kindred is a very dynamic, very different kind of a structuring of a whole group of kins, and it is structured around ego, and it is based upon both the blood related as well as marriage relations. For example, if this person marries a certain girl, then the family of hers will become a part of his kindred, right? तो ऐसे होता है. I hope you understand. This is not a type of descent grouping as such. This is just कि kinship में kindred होता है. Kinship means आपके relatives, how you trace your line, how you trace your descent, all of that. And उसका whole grouping, if we see from the perspective of the ego, that means the person, तो फिर that becomes a kindred, right? तो अभी हमने 3 चीज़ें देख ली types of kins में. that पहली बात, kinship जो है, it can be either through blood relation or through marriage. If it is through marriage, that is called alliance or affinal relationships. If it is through blood, they are called as descent groups or consanguineal kins, right? In consanguineal kins we have talked about based on the distance कि कौन किसके कितने करीब है, that is primary kins, secondary kins and tertiary kins. Of course, like it's like you're more closer to your parents ना, you have a one-on-one connection with them, daily routine में बात करते हो. But if you have a joint family, then आपके चाचा मामा ताया जी के साथ भी you will have a, you know, closeness. But as the distance goes on increasing, the relationship changes also, right? So based on the distance, primary, secondary and tertiary kins. Then we talked about how you see the line of descent. So usme direct ancestry is lineal, and then there is direct ancestry but do not follow the same line, that will be collateral kins, and the whole grouping of the ego would be kindred. Now next is unilineal descent groups. Now basically in descent groups अभी हमने देखा descent क्या होता है, how we trace our ancestry, right? And this is descent would be based on blood, right? अब if you trace your ancestry only through one line, right, only through a single line, that would be called a unilineal. Uni means one, lineal means line. So unilineal descent group, when you trace your ancestry only from a single line, either it could be your male line or female line. Depending on that, it could be patrilineal or matrilineal societies. Don't worry, I'll explain you. Okay, so now let's see this. For example, this is one group, they have a son, then he gets married, they have a son, he gets married, right? And then this is another grouping, she has a daughter, she gets married, again she has a daughter, she gets married. Now basically unilineal descent groups की ज़रूरत क्या है, या मे whatever descent groups की ही ज़रूरत क्या है? The thing is that humans live in groups, right? They have a social obligation or, you know, a necessity to live in social groups, and they have cultural needs. So to live in an orderly way, because if things are happening in a chaos like transfer of rights and obligations, ठीक है, if they have surplus like property etc., who to give that surplus to, right? If these things are happening in a disorderly manner, that means there will be chaos in the society, and the stability of the group as such, you know, will be threatened. So to keep those things, we need rules as to how these things would be transferred, the rights, the obligations, the duties, how they are going to, and how the group is going to work in an orderly manner. So certain rules of descent are required. So usme first thing is unilineal descent group. That means you are tracing your ancestry through only one line. It could be male line, it could be female line, depending upon the kind of society it is. For example, if we take this, right, if we take this as the only line through which all the rights, obligations are transferred, and a person resonates to only this kind of line, it would be a patrilineal society, because everything is passed on to next generation from father to son, right? So this would be a patrilineal grouping. If that happens from mother to daughter, it would become a matrilineal line, right? Mother to daughter, like that. So depending upon that, patrilineal and matrilineal groupings मिल जाएंगे हमको, right? In unilineal descent groups. Now these groups have certain characteristics, like claims of other groups are often ignored. For example, हम इसमें यहाँ पे थोड़ा साफ करके बना लेते हैं, and then we will try to understand all the points through this slide, right? They have a son, then they have a son, they have a son. थोड़ा बड़ा group बनाते हैं so that it's much clear. ठीक है? Now she has a daughter, again daughter, again daughter, right? Here the grouping is going on from mother to daughter, from father to son, right? Now often the claims of other sexes are ignored, because for example let us assume that he has a daughter too, right? So now this daughter will not receive anything. That means the group will only the descent or the group will be known through this person, after this person, then this person, then this person, right? So even if she is the mother or even if she is the sister, they have no role in the grouping. That means very important people in the grouping are ignored and their claims too are ignored. Similarly in this it would be mother, then her daughter, then her daughter. So here the husband has no claim, right? If there is another boy, he has no claims. So then role of other important relationships, sexes are ignored. First point is this, important relatives excluded, ये भी बात हमने कर लिया, right? Then these societies lack elaborate political organization, right? So now we were talking कि as the things will go on being civilized, या हम जिसको बोलेंगे evolution होती जाएगी, more and more complex organizations will come in. So we can say basically unilineal descent groups are a very simple kind of societies, where there is no other kind of way to organize people or to regulate them, their activities. So they are very simple societies, they lack political organization, because what is the purpose of the unilineal descent group? It is just to transfer the rights and obligations. For example, if after this person dies, who will take care of the group? How will that group regulate itself? Who will be given the rights and obligations of those groups? How is the transfer of property going to happen? How is the ritual office going to transfer? Political office going to transfer? So for that to make it that easy, so that there is no chaos, the group doesn't disintegrate, these unilineal descent groups are created. That means it functions as a political organization also. So basically they are simple societies, but they need to work some in some way. So they have created this kind of grouping. So these are clear cut groupings, of course. That means there is no confusion. It's very clear after who is going to come next. They are unambiguous, right? So us hisab se there is no conflicting situations, and they act as separate units. For example, if there is confusion, for example if I say that descent दो तरफ से हो रहा है, for example this person will see his descent from the mother line also and the father line also. That means अगर हम बोले कि for example हम इसका एक और बेटा बना देते हैं, right? अब now एक तो descent group इस if we take this person, एक तो descent group इसका ये चल रहा है, right? Then if we generate one more like this, right, or like this, so then there will be a lot of confusion in a situation of crisis. Who is going to act as which grouping ka part will be a lot more chaotic, right? So this in unilineal descent group doesn't happen. They act as separate units, because if this is the grouping, this is only going to be your descent group, nothing apart from this. This is how the things are going to get transferred. So there is no confusion. They are structured around the ancestor, right? हमको पता है, we are looking at ancestor, and through that ancestor the things are then getting passed on to the next generation, and they are permanent groupings, right? And they carry out important activities like rites de passage. Rites de passages means the rituals, how the rites are going to how are they going to be done, right? Then political activities also. For example, if the father dies, right, and they are the leader of the group, so the next leader of the group would be his son, and the next leader would be his son, right? So like that. Then religious office also, and social functions also, right? So this is what it was about unilineal descent groups, and let us look at some differences that are there in the patrilineal and matrilineal descent groups. So basically in patrilineal groups, the line of descent and authority converge. That means if we are talking about this grouping, it is the rights and obligations are transferring from father to son, and everything, the authority, the grouping, ऐसे ही होता है. But in matrilineal groups ना, we were talking about this yesterday also. In matrilineal societies, what happens? Everything goes via the female line, but the authority is with the authority then also stays with the male members of the grouping. That means the important relationships in a matrilineal grouping would be ego and maternal uncle, mamaji, right? So this is the dichotomy, this is the disharmony in the matrilineal groups. So we can say that in patriarchal societies, matrilineal descent groups are very unstable, because there is conflict towards loyalty, whether to give that loyalty to, own son or to the sister's son. For example, if this is the mamaji, if we have this grouping, mamaji is there, right? Mamaji, and he has his own son, but he cannot show his loyalty to his own son. That means he cannot transfer the rights to his own son, but he will have to transfer his rights to sister's son. So it's like, just think about yourself only, na? If you will have kids, obviously you will want everything, whatever you have, you will want to give that to your children and not to your siblings' children, right? So that is where the conflict of loyalty comes in. So matrilineal societies थोड़े से unstable इसलिए, because then even though things are happening through female line, but then the authority and the line of descent do not converge. The descent line is seen from the female, but the authority is with the male members, right? Then there are conflict between son and sister's son, right? So like that. In patrilineal, there is a clear-cut demarcation and loyalty. That means authority भी father to son जाएगी, and everything else, descent भी ऐसे ही होगा, right? So here father son relationship is dominant, and residence की बात भी होगी तो it would be a patrilocal residence. That means they will stay with the father's family. That means if the son marries, the wife will come in the family and they will stay with the father's family. Now if you do not know what is patrilocal, neolocal, avunculocal, I suggest you to please go back, watch the previous chapter, because that's very important. It will also help you to create links. So please go watch those videos first and then come to this. So in matrilineal societies, the descent group would be neolocal and avunculocal. That means either they are staying with neither of the relatives' families, or with the mamaji ka family, like that, right? So that is how in matrilineal societies थोड़ा सा disharmony रहता है. Then you can write some examples. For example, patrilineal societies में there is Tikopia or Western Pacific, and mostly all the tribes in India are patrilineal only. Whereas in matrilineal, you can say Nayars of Kerala, Asanthi of Ghana, Navajo of Africa. These are certain examples of matrilineal tribes or matrilineal descent groups. So this is all for today. Tomorrow we will do second part of this chapter. We'll go into a lot more detail. Today I just curtailed myself to the introductory part of this chapter. I hope you liked it. Any doubts, please post in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer. And any suggestions, please do tell me. Guys, please do like, share and subscribe. I'm going to complete the whole syllabus. To please motivate me also, it's very important. Please share with other fellow aspirants, and thank you.